The day my daughter told me, "You're not welcome here anymore," she expected me to cry. She expected me to apologize. She expected me to disappear. What she didn't expect was that I would come back calmer, quieter, and change everything without raising my voice again. This is the story of how I followed her rule, and how it unraveled her entire illusion of control. My name is Marianne, and for 22 years I was married to Daniel. We didn't have a perfect marriage. Nobody does. But we had loyalty. We had history. We had shared jokes that no one else understood. 8 years ago, after too many fights about space and independence, we made a decision most people don't understand. We stayed married, but we lived separately. Two small homes half a mile apart. Still dated. Still celebrated anniversaries. Still called each other husband and wife. It worked for us. Until last autumn. That's when my daughter, Clara, and her husband moved into Daniel's house temporarily. They were saving for a home. Daniel insisted they not pay rent. "She's my daughter," he said proudly. "Let me help." I didn't object. Maybe I should have. It was 3 weeks before Christmas. I stopped by after texting Daniel first, like always. We were sitting in the living room, Clara on the armchair, scrolling on her phone. Her husband quiet as usual. Out of nowhere, she snapped. "Why are you here again?" I blinked. "To see my husband." She laughed, sharp, ugly. "You don't live here. It's weird." The room froze. Daniel looked confused. I felt my face burn. I asked calmly, "What's going on?" She leaned forward. "I don't like you coming over. It's uncomfortable. This isn't your house." That sentence. That audacity. Words were exchanged. I won't pretend I was graceful. I've spent years walking on eggshells around Clara. She's bipolar and refuses treatment. The family tiptoes around her moods. But that night, I was done tiptoeing. I called her selfish. She called me pathetic. I walked out. 2 weeks later, I swallowed my pride and asked to meet her. I apologized for the names I'd called her. Specifically. Clearly. I shouldn't have said those things. She stared at me. No apology back. Not even acknowledgement. Just silence. So, I made a decision. I will continue visiting my husband, I told her. I will not speak to you. I will not engage. If my presence bothers you, you may leave the room. This is not your house. Her face hardened. She thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. The first time I returned after that conversation, she tested me. She walked into the kitchen where Daniel and I were laughing over coffee. "Must be nice," she muttered loudly. I didn't look at her. Didn't blink. Didn't react. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. That was the moment she realized something terrifying. She couldn't provoke me anymore. For years, Clara controlled the emotional climate of every room. If she was upset, everyone felt it. If she was angry, everyone adjusted. But now, I gave her nothing. No reaction. No argument. No oxygen. And something shifted. Daniel began noticing. "She seems tense lately," he said one night. I simply replied, "I wouldn't know." And that was true. Clara and her husband had been living there rent-free for almost a year, saving for a house. Except they weren't saving much. Daniel started mentioning groceries disappearing faster, utilities rising, packages arriving daily. One evening, I heard Clara yelling about needing privacy and space. Privacy. In someone else's home. Daniel began spending more evenings at my place. Not because I asked. Because it was peaceful. The breaking point came 6 months later. Daniel told Clara he wanted them to start contributing to utilities. Nothing major. Just something symbolic. She exploded. "You're choosing her over me?" Daniel blinked. This isn't about your mother. It's always about her. That was the first time he corrected her. She is my wife. Not was. Is. And something in Clara's control fractured. 3 weeks later, Clara and her husband moved into a small rental. She didn't say goodbye to me. I didn't expect her to. But here's the part she didn't anticipate. Daniel asked if I'd consider moving back in. Not because Clara left, but because he missed us. The quiet dinners, the easy laughter, the partnership without tension. Living apart had solved our marriage issues. But living apart to avoid drama? That felt different. Months later, Clara came over, to my house this time. She looked smaller somehow. You won, she said. I shook my head. This wasn't a competition. She hesitated. I felt replaced. That was the truth underneath everything. Not territory. Not control. Fear. I told her gently, you were never competing with me. You're my daughter. But you don't get to erase me to feel secure. She didn't apologize. But she didn't argue either. And for Clara, that was growth. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. Real revenge is consistency. It's refusing to abandon yourself. It's letting someone face the consequences of their own behavior without rescuing them from it. I didn't yell. I didn't demand. I didn't manipulate. I simply stayed. And in staying, calmly, firmly, I reminded everyone where I belonged. Maybe in her version of the story, maybe I'm the cold mother who ignored her daughter. But here's what I know. Boundaries are not cruelty. Silence is not abuse. And visiting my husband in his own home was never something I needed permission for. Speech balloon ending reflection. If you've ever been told you don't belong in a space you helped build, if you've ever felt guilty for protecting your peace, remember this. You don't need to fight to keep your place. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stop reacting and let the truth speak for itself. Just tell me which direction you want to take this story. I thought the storm had passed when she moved out. I was wrong. Because if Clara couldn't control the house anymore, she was going to control the narrative. And this time, she wasn't just coming for my visits. She was coming for my reputation. 1. The smear campaign. It started subtly. A cousin stopped replying to my texts. My sister asked carefully, "Is everything okay between you and Clara?" I knew that tone. Someone had been talking. Then I saw it. A vague Facebook post from Clara. Some people love playing victim while destroying their own family. Boundaries aren't respected. Manipulation isn't love. No names. But everyone knew. And suddenly, I was the villain in a story I hadn't even told. 8 years ago, when Daniel and I chose to live separately, we learned something powerful. Not every misunderstanding needs defending. But lies? Lies grow in silence. Still, I didn't respond online. I didn't post quotes. I didn't argue publicly. Instead, I did something far more effective. I kept living calmly, hosting Sunday dinners, inviting extended family, treating Clara's absence like it was temporary, not dramatic. And people noticed consistency. Then came the real bomb. Clara told relatives that I had emotionally abandoned her when she was younger, that I always favored her stepfather over her, that I chose a man over my child. That one hurt, because anyone who knows me knows the truth. Clara was my world. I worked double shifts when she was little. I defended her against teachers. I stayed up nights during her mood spirals when she was first diagnosed bipolar. But memory bends when someone needs to justify their anger. And she needed justification. 3 months later, Easter approached. Daniel insisted we invite everyone, including Clara. She showed up, tense, guarded. Dinner started civil. Then my brother made a casual comment. Well, at least now, everyone's getting along again. Clara laughed bitterly. Oh, we're not getting along. We're just pretending. The room tightened. She turned to Daniel. Tell them how she ignores me. Tell them how she acts like I don't exist. All eyes shifted to me. I could have defended myself. I could have recited every detail. Instead, I spoke calmly. I ignore hostility. Not my daughter. Silence. Clara's face flushed. She's lying. She's manipulative. Daniel finally did what he hadn't done that night before Christmas. He stood up.
No.
Enough. The authority in his voice stunned everyone. You told your mother she wasn't welcome in my home. You never apologized. She set a boundary. That's not manipulation. Clara stared at him like he'd betrayed her. But he hadn't. He'd simply chosen truth. 2 weeks after that dinner, Clara showed up at my door. Alone. No warning. She looked exhausted. I didn't think he'd take your side, she said. It wasn't about sides, I replied. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework as a teenager. I needed someone to blame. There it was. Not hatred.
Pain.
I feel stuck, she whispered. Everyone expects me to be stable, to be better. And when I'm not, I look for someone to make it their fault. I didn't rush to hug her. I didn't rescue. I simply listened. And for the first time in years, she wasn't performing anger. She was just tired. She admitted something I hadn't expected. When you and Dad started living separately, I thought you were leaving. I thought eventually you'd leave for good. Even though we stayed married. Even though we never stopped showing up. In her mind, separation meant instability. And instability meant fear. So when she moved into Daniel's house, she wasn't claiming territory. She was testing permanence. When I kept visiting, it threatened her illusion of security.
It wasn't about ownership.
It was about fear of abandonment. I can't keep being your emotional punching bag, I told her gently. You're my daughter. I love you. But love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. She nodded slowly. I know. That was new.
No shouting. No deflection.
Just acknowledgement. A month later, Clara started therapy. Voluntarily. Daniel told me quietly one evening, almost afraid to jinx it. She made the appointment herself. That mattered more than any apology. Because growth you're forced into doesn't stick. Growth you choose does. The real shift happened when Clara posted again online. This time it read, healing means admitting when you've projected your pain onto the wrong person. I'm learning.
No tag.
No name. But this time, people knew. And suddenly, the whispers stopped. Last week, she came over for dinner.
She didn't avoid me. She didn't challenge me.
She simply handed me a dish she'd cooked and said quietly, I'm glad you didn't stop coming. That was her apology.
Small.
Imperfect. But real. Revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's endurance. Sometimes it's refusing to disappear when someone demands you shrink. I didn't win by overpowering her. I won by staying steady long enough for the storm to burn itself out. And maybe that's not revenge at all. Maybe that's what boundaries look like when they're tested. She tried to erase me from my own marriage. Instead, she rediscovered what it means to have a mother who doesn't run. If you'd like, I can write. The day Clara finally started therapy, I thought the war was over. I was wrong. Because peace has a way of shaking loose secrets. And one afternoon, while cleaning out old paperwork with Daniel, I discovered something that changed everything. The house she fought so hard to control was never legally his. Daniel and I were reorganizing documents in his office, insurance papers, tax returns, old warranties. He handed me a faded manila envelope. Can you check what this is? Looks like something from years ago. I opened it, and my stomach dropped.
The deed.
The house, the one Clara had claimed wasn't mine, had been transferred into my name 6 years earlier. I stared at him. Daniel, this says I'm the sole owner. He blinked, confused. Then he remembered.
Oh.
That was when we refinanced. The attorney suggested putting it under your name for liability reasons since I was starting that business. I sat down. Clara had told me to stop coming to her father's house. She'd treated me like a visitor. But legally, I was the homeowner, and I had never once used that fact against her. I won't lie. For one brief, dangerous moment, I imagined the satisfaction. The look on her face if I calmly placed the deed on the kitchen table and said, "Actually, sweetheart, this is my house." The ultimate mic drop. The cleanest revenge. But something stopped me. Because revenge feels powerful for about 5 minutes. Then it leaves ashes. 2 weeks later, Clara and her husband came to dinner. She looked lighter these days. Therapy was softening her edges. Midway through dessert, she hesitated. "There's something I need to tell you both." Daniel and I exchanged glances. Her husband squeezed her hand. "We're pregnant." The room froze. Suddenly, this wasn't about ego or territory anymore. This was the next generation. And all I could think was, what kind of foundation do we build from here? Then came the second part. "We're thinking about moving back in for a while after the baby's born," she said carefully. "Just until we save more." There it was. History circling back.
Daniel looked at me.
Not for permission, but for partnership. Because now he knew, and I knew, and Clara didn't. This house wasn't just his generosity. It was my legal responsibility. The next day, I asked Clara to meet me alone. No audience. No drama. I placed a folder on the table between us. "I want to show you something." She looked wary. I slid the deed across. She scanned it. Her face changed. This is yours." "Yes." Silence. The weight of every argument she'd made pressed into the room. "You never told me." "I didn't need to." Her voice cracked. "I told you to stop coming to your own house." "Yes." Tears welled in her eyes. Not dramatic, not manipulative. Just human. I was awful. I didn't rush to absolve her. "I don't need perfection from you. I need respect." She nodded. "If you move back," I continued calmly, "there will be clear expectations. Not punishments. Expectations. A contribution to utilities. Mutual respect. No rewriting history when emotions spike." Therapy continues. She didn't argue. Not once. Because this time, she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to grow. When they moved back in temporarily, something felt different. Not tense. Balanced. Clara began asking before making changes in the house. She thanked me for meals. Small things. But respect is built in small things. And one evening, while folding baby clothes together, she said quietly, "I think I kept fighting you because I thought if I didn't, I'd lose my place." "You were never competing with me," I said. She shook her head. "I know that now." Later that night, Daniel admitted something. "I should have stepped in sooner. I let you carry too much." He wasn't wrong. For years, I had been the emotional shock absorber.
But now, I didn't need to be.
Because I wasn't fighting for space anymore. I owned it, literally and emotionally. When the baby arrived, a little girl with Clara's eyes, something softened permanently. Holding my granddaughter, I realized something unexpected. The greatest revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's outgrowing the version of you that needed to. Clara watched me rock her daughter. And instead of jealousy, there was peace. Because this time, she wasn't afraid I'd disappear. She knew I wouldn't. Months later, Clara approached me with papers. "We found a house," she said. "We're ready," They had actually saved. They had actually planned. Before signing, she hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not using that deed to humiliate me." I smiled. I never needed to. 11. What this was really about. This story was never about a house. It was about fear,
Control.
abandonment, identity. She tried to claim territory because she felt unstable. I almost used ownership as revenge because I felt disrespected. But in the end, neither of us needed to win. We needed clarity. She once told me not to come back. Now she hands me her house keys when she needs help with the baby. And the difference between those two moments? Boundaries handled without cruelty. Just when I thought our family had finally found peace, a single phone call threatened to tear it apart again. It wasn't Clara. It wasn't Daniel. It was a lawyer. And the words he said made my stomach drop. "There's something you need to know about the will." Daniel had gone in for what we thought was a routine heart check. Nothing dramatic, just precaution. But precaution turned into surgery. Surgery turned into a week in the hospital. And hospitals make people think about mortality. 2 weeks after he was discharged, he quietly updated his will. I didn't question it until the attorney called me separately. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said gently, "your husband wanted to ensure you understood his intentions." Intentions. I hate that word. It always means trouble. Daniel had left the house, fully, undeniably to me. Not jointly. Not split.
Meaning.
Clara would inherit financial assets, savings, investments. But the property? Mine alone. The lawyer continued. He was concerned that if ownership transferred too quickly, housing stability might be compromised. Housing stability. A careful way of saying he didn't trust Clara with it. I didn't tell Clara immediately. I didn't tell anyone. Because I knew how this would look. Like favoritism. Like betrayal. Like I'd won. And Clara, pregnant and nesting in her new home, was finally stable. But secrets have expiration dates. 3 months later, Daniel casually mentioned updating paperwork during Sunday dinner. Clara froze. "You updated your will?" Her voice had that familiar sharp edge. Daniel nodded. "Just to make things clear."
Clear.
The word landed wrong.
She looked at me.
"What does that mean?" And I knew the moment had arrived. "I own the house," I said calmly. "Legally and in the will." Silence swallowed the room. Her husband stared at his plate. Daniel inhaled slowly. Clara's face went pale. "So, even after everything, you still don't trust me?" "It's not about trust," Daniel said. "It feels like it," she snapped. There it was again. Not greed.
Fear.
6. The accusation. "You think I'm unstable," she said, eyes glossy. "You think I'd ruin everything." Daniel's voice stayed steady. "I think stability matters. And your mother has been the constant in this family for decades." That wasn't cruelty. It was fact. But facts can sting harder than insults. Clara stood up. "So, what happens when you're gone?" "I just ask permission to visit my childhood home." I answered quietly. "You would be welcome. But ownership and access are different things." Her chest rose sharply. For a split second, I saw the old version of her, defensive, ready to explode. But she didn't. She sat back down. And instead of yelling, she asked, "Why?" Not why am I not on it, but why this decision? And that's when Daniel told the truth. "When you told your mother she didn't belong," he said, "it shook me." Clara blinked. "You were willing to erase her from her own life. I needed to make sure that could never happen again." It wasn't about punishment. It was about protection.
Of me.
Of history. Of permanence. Clara's shoulders dropped. Because deep down, she knew. She remembered that night. What none of us expected was what she said next. "I don't want the house." We both looked at her. I don't want something that feels like a test I have to pass. I want something I build. Her voice wasn't bitter.
It was resolved.
I spent so long trying to claim space that wasn't mine because I was scared. I don't want my daughter growing up thinking security comes from controlling people. That was the moment I knew therapy had changed her. Not perfectly, but meaningfully. 10. The quiet apology. Later that night, she stayed behind after everyone left. She walked through the hallway slowly, touching the walls. I used to think this house meant Dad loved me more, she admitted. Or less. Or something. It was never about love, I said. It was about responsibility. She nodded. I'm sorry for trying to push you out. There it was. The full apology. Not partial. Not implied. Months later, Daniel made one more adjustment. He added a clause. If I ever chose to sell the house, Clara would have first right of purchase at market value. Not gifted. Not withheld.
Fair.
Balanced. Adult. And when she read that update, she smiled. That feels right. Years ago, I thought revenge would look like humiliation. Like slamming the deed down. Like saying, see? You were wrong. But revenge matured into something else.
Security.
Calm authority. Not shrinking when challenged. Not attacking when tempted. The greatest power I had was never the paperwork. It was patience. She once tried to erase my place in the house. Now she brings her daughter over every Sunday and says, let's go see Grandma's home. And this time, she says it with pride.